In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 steps for hiring overseas that we use to hire over 60 Latin American remote workers. We're using a method that most hiring experts just never think to tell you. And so when we use this method for our clients, they have a 93% quality success rate. This way you can hire with confidence and you never have to regret another hire. Does this sound like you? You don't know if your talent has multiple jobs, or you're frustrated they can't problem solve on their own, or you spend more time fixing their mistakes than it would take to do it yourselves. And this leaves business owners frustrated and questioning if you can hire overseas at all. And so the reason why most business owners fail to hire quality overseas talent is that they outline the job posting from a template or from ChatGPT. And that just doesn't work because you have a unique business. And so that means you have unique needs. And so there's a big difference between the expectation you have in your head and the outcome and results of the role. Or another problem is business owners write down just everything they need. And you just don't know enough about the country you're hiring in to know how to position those tasks. And so in both cases, you just need a simple role design process. This process matches your needs to the talent overseas. And if you skip this role matching process, you're set up to be frustrated. And in most times, when you hire a recruiting agency, they'll skip this process entirely too and just recruit whatever you tell them. Here's a success example. So before Kyrie made this change, he only had a few clients. And then his hires were so good, he tripled his business and hired 11 people in 3 months. So I'm gonna show you the ultimate guide to hiring quality overseas. We're gonna cover 3 things so you don't regret your overseas hire. First one is how you design the role to get the results that you actually want. Then 2 is how you find the person to get those results. And lastly, we're gonna talk about how you integrate them into your business so that they actually succeed. Let's get into it. So today we're gonna cover exactly how you get your hire right the first time so you don't regret the hire, but also you don't have to spend 30 hours per hire, right? If you have 10, 20, 30 employees and you're trying to scale quickly and you have to make 3 to 5 hires a month or more, that quickly becomes a full-time job. And so we're gonna help you figure out, I'm gonna give you all the resources you need to scale it yourself or know what someone's doing for you so you don't have to spend all that time doing it and you won't regret the hires that you actually make, right? So why listen to me? Why trust me? So I run a talent agency here in Latin America. This is Brazil. I'm here in Brazil right now. And I spend the year bouncing around South America, looking at distribution channels to acquire more talent and talking to talent in person, right? So I've placed over 57 hires and we get, for every role we put out, we get about 2,000 applicants because we've been able to build those distribution channels here, right? A heavy focus on Colombia, Argentina, and Mexico. And we work with agencies, SaaS, e-com businesses. Cool. And one stat I'm really proud of is 93% of our clients come back and buy more, right? Because they're really happy with the clients they get, the quality they get. I'm gonna show you exactly how you can get them yourself too. Cool. So what's my story? How'd I get here? So I spent 6 years as a management consultant at Deloitte, building management systems for Fortune 500s, right? And so I ended up writing the stories, the lessons, the tips, the frameworks that we used to build these management systems on the internet and got me 85,000 followers on LinkedIn and Twitter. And from those followers, I had folks reach out and be like, hey, can you actually build those management marketing systems for me? And so I became a CMO for agency, SaaS, and e-com businesses, right? And so as I was a CMO, I would build these marketing systems, right? So what's a system? A system is just people, processes, and technology that you need to actually make things happen in your business so that you don't have to spend all your time in the business, you can work on the business and it runs for you, right? And so I would take these marketing systems, give it to the folks of the business, and they would say, hey, that's great, that's awesome, build these systems, but who's going to run it? And so I ended up plugging the people into the business, right, from Latin America. And so I would put the people into the business to make it a reality, make the marketing systems happen. And my friends would say, hey, that's great. So cool you did that. Can you do that for me too? And so and then the business really took off. And here I am today with a Latin American talent business for folks in the US, right? And so how are we going to spend our time today, right? So what I've found, basically taking the talent side of the fence, right? Actually finding the talent and connecting that with the management systems to make sure that you're not spending extra time you don't need managing that talent you just hired, right? Like you should be able to, talent is the ultimate form of leverage. And so if they're going to do work for you, you shouldn't be spending more time fixing their mistakes or telling them what to do than actually doing the thing themselves, right? You should be working on building the business. And so what we do differently is my consulting background. So you'll see the traditional just the talent placement part is that middle part. It's part two. We'll talk about it. But I think the most important part is one, role design, figuring out what do you actually need, right? Because I challenge that a lot. A lot of people come to me with a role that doesn't actually make as much sense as they thought it did up front. And so I'll help you figure out how to get the most leverage, most bang for your buck out of your role so that you can step out of being, stop doing fire drills, step out of the weeds and actually focus on working on the business, right? Two is we'll find your high performers, right? And so that's how do we get 2,000 applicants a role in Latin America, right? How do we filter them in a way that doesn't take all your time? How do we actually make that choice and get the person that you don't regret hiring, that you actually have an amazing experience with and they build your business for you? And step three, we're back to 1 and 3 are things that we do from a management perspective to make sure that you actually get the results that you wanted when you hire the person, is making sure that the environment you put the person in is an environment that they can succeed in, right? Because I can find the best talent in the world, but if we place it in a business that doesn't have the environment set for them to succeed, they'll fail. And so we need to make sure that they are onboarded properly, that they know what success is, etc., so that they can actually deliver what you want them to deliver, right? And we'll do all this by sharing real examples. This will be real case studies. All our clients, we've had where clients have gone wrong, the tools and solutions that we place in the business to make sure they get it right, so you don't make these mistakes yourself, right? At the end, I got a ton of resources that we've built ourselves that you can use for your business. It's just a downloadable file that you'll be able to copy paste and actually create these management systems yourself, and so you won't waste any time. Cool? Let's get into it. Okay, cool. So why is hiring wrong so painful, right? And if you're sitting in this chair, you're watching this, you have a team that's overworked. And if your team's overworked, quality of your deliverables drop and you get nervous. You're nervous to sell, right? You want to sell because you know you need the cash flow, but at the same time, you're a little nervous that you can't deliver the quality that you're so proud of, right? And so you need talent to be able to not have your team be overworked, to be able to deliver what you sell and make sure there's not as much mistakes and you have a motivated team, right? When you hire wrong and you have to replace them, that's a 3-month process. You've lost 3 months because the search to find the person, 1 month. The onboarding them, training them, another month or 2, right? Realizing that they're not the right fit and then firing them, that's another few weeks, another week. And then launching a search again and going through the process again, right? That's 3 to 5 months. And so you don't want, time is so valuable, you can't lose that amount of time. And so you got to get it right, right? And lastly is costs, right? There's opportunity costs of not taking on more clients, but then there's also all the spend on recruiting and training, etc. You're losing $8,000, $10,000. So let's get that hire right the first time. Okay, cool. So I run a Latin American talent agency. And the natural question is why wouldn't I just hire in the US? It's scary hiring overseas, right? Because you don't know, what's taxes and compliance look like? Do I get in trouble there? What's quality look like? Will they have multiple jobs, right? Will clients look at me weird for having someone, having a team I'm in Brazil and here in Brazil, right? We address all of that, right? Because I'm a huge believer this is the most underutilized tool, because I don't think people understand how amazing it is, right? The quality is the same, right? And if you don't think it's the same, it's either you've had a bad hire or you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing someone with far more experience who's a higher level, more agency, more seniority to someone who would be the equivalent of a middle manager, right? Mid-tier person in the US. You need to compare mid-tier, right? If you're hiring mid-tier. You can't compare a mid-tier to a C-suite, right? And I think that's what a lot of people do when they think about quality differences. Okay, so why hire locally? Locally, the answer isn't one or the other, it's both. And that's where we design for the business. So for example, I had a client last week who said, hey, this is great, I need 2 designers, right? I need a digital designer who's gonna be doing my ads, my social media, etc. And I need a packaging designer who's it's an e-com business. Well, e-com, but also brick and mortar. And they said, hey, I need someone to make the packaging for at checkout, right? And so what they did is they needed someone in person to do the packaging design, because they wanted someone to physically hold the packaging and check to make sure it was good and be in the office to compare packaging and physically hold it there. Makes sense. And then for the digital design, paid media, you don't need someone in person. And so it makes sense to have someone remote. And so we hired someone remote here in Latin America, and they're finding someone. This was in the UK. They're finding someone in Ireland to do the physical packaging, right? That also applies for sales. Like if you do door-to-door sales, or if you have real estate and you need someone who understands the cultural references as you're selling, that's a toss-up, depends on the company. But those are good examples to hire locally, right? Now, if you don't need that, I highly recommend to hire globally. Why? You can hire for a few reasons. One is, I mentioned the no difference in quality, right? But you can hire faster because it's so much, the rates are so different. The cost of living is so different, right? And so in the US, imagine you can just hire an account manager, right? It'll run you $5,000, $7,000 a month, right? Depends on the specificity, levels, etc. But let's just use that. That same price in LatAm can be $1,500 a month, right? To $2,000 a month. And so in LatAm, for that same exact price, in the US, you've got an account manager. In LatAm, you've got your account manager, you've got a sales rep, you've got an executive assistant, you know? And so you're able to just have more resources faster, grow faster, and have more people supporting your business. That's more leverage, right? At the same quality. And so let's say you don't need to grow fast, you don't need as many people. Well, you can grow profitably, right? It's really hard to hit your profit margin goals. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the agencies who say, hey, I personally made more when my business was at $1 million a year than it was at $3 million a year, right? And why is that? Because it's hard to hit those margins as you scale. Scale is expensive, growth is expensive. And so if you're trying to hit 85% gross, 35% net, like hiring overseas is going to allow you to hit that. So whether you want to hire faster or you want to hire in a healthy way that hits your margins, hiring overseas is an amazing way to do that, right? Cool. Okay, so let's go through. So we're going to go through three things, right? The first one, role design. How do you actually figure out what you need done to make sure it actually happens, right? So let's talk about that. I love this quote from Sean Puri, right? And I think a lot of people, and what I'll just say real quick, a job is a bundle of tasks, right? Why is that so important? Because people flip it on its head. They usually say, hey, I need a project manager. And then they look at what does a project manager do, and then that's the job description, that's the tasks, and that's what they go up against, right? That's just not the best way to do it, right? That is not going to mesh well with your business. Your business is unique. You're in a unique situation. You have unique needs depending on how you've decided to set it up and the people you've had and the tech you have, etc. So every single project manager has different tasks to do depending on their role, their business. And so to say, I just need a project manager and then take the generic description of a project manager and put that on the internet and just hope that's going to be a good fit for your business is not going to work. You know what will is if you take a step back and go, I don't know what I need yet, but I know what tasks I need done, right? And that's what we're going to do. We look at what are the tasks that you need, right? And how do you do the tasks and that kind of stuff. And then from there we go, oh, this is the list of tasks we need. What kind of person is a good fit for that, right? That's different. And I'll show you an example I've got a case study in here that shows you like an example of just three wildly different job titles for the same set of tasks. And so here's how typically what we'll do to get it done is one is, okay, look at the tasks, the order, right? That's here on the left, it's that process. And on the right, you go, okay, these are the tasks I need done. How will I get those done? Well, use people or technology to do those things, right? And as AI takes off, technology is going to be more and more of a powerful thing that's going to take more tasks. And so the type of person you need is going to be changing over time as well. Cool. So why is role design so important? I alluded to this a second ago, where it's like if you don't design your role right, you just take a generic project manager description off the internet, it's not going to merge well with your business. You're going to bring in the person who wanted that job description, not your job description, and boom, you've got a clash of what does performance look like. They've got completely different expectations. What they don't know what tasks success looks like what tasks they need to get done. They don't know the type of person you brought in is just wrong, right? The person you actually need isn't attracted to the role because you have the wrong tasks. You're advertising the wrong tasks, right? And so it's really important to figure out what do you actually need, right? And so the way we do it is, as I mentioned, choose the tasks, right? I repeat things I think are so important. Choose the tasks. And then choose a title that best resembles the person you need for those tasks. Right? That's a bit of a switch. And if the difference hasn't gotten clear yet, I'll show you now. Okay. And lastly is on the compensation side, right? You have to make sure that you have the right compensation for the role. And what I mean is if you go too high, you're overpaying. You go too low, the person that you need isn't actually attracted to the role and you don't come in, right? So I'll give you resources on how to do that. Cool, write tasks. This is a funny example, a live one. So one was too many tasks. I had this client who, this is gonna sound like a fake made up story because it's so extreme, but this is a real client I had who said, hey, I need I think it was let's say a project manager. It wasn't really, it was an account manager who was also doing delivery, right? He showed me the checklist of things that they needed to get done. Not making this up, it was 87 things, right? No one's gonna do 87 things a day, right? And so okay, so clearly you look at those tasks and go, that's not doable. Your expectations are different from reality, and so there's gonna be a break and you're gonna be disappointed with anyone I bring into your business. Well, the other side of that is if you have two different tasks, right? Too many different tasks. Why is that? Well, let's say you needed a project manager and all your tasks are related to project management. Great, I'm gonna get you the best project manager in the world and they'll crush those tasks. Awesome. Or you could be like a client I had 3 weeks ago who said, hey, I need a project manager, content creator. And I'm like, wait, what? And so you need someone who's gonna be in Asana, in the details, making sure scope, budget, timeline is on track. But, oh, by the way, they also need to be able to write hooks and be in Canva doing design. Canva's not that hard, but Figma doing designs for Instagram. If you have those two skill sets, they're going to be very average at both, right? Because they're just so different. The type of person, the training that person had, the experience that person had, if you find that person, they're going to be average at both, you're going to get frustrated. Right? If you're okay with that, right, where you say, hey, I want a generalist, not a specialist, that's cool too. You just have to have the appropriate expectations for that, right? Cool. And lastly is you're setting up tasks with no leverage. Here's what I mean by that. I got the screenshot from a client who said, hey, I want a chief of staff. I said, great, right? For context, a traditional chief of staff role is someone who's on the CEO track. This is the way I like to describe it. They're on the CEO track and they said, hey, I want more work-life balance. And so they switch to chief of staff. They're the advisor to the CEO. They support and enable the CEO. Awesome. So you have a very strategic person, high leverage, doing things that really move and shake the business. Great. We'll got you that for you. And then look at the job description and it's 90% EA, executive assistant type roles, right? Where they're booking calendar invites, they're scheduling restaurants, et cetera, right? And so they're trying. The problem with that is, yeah, you can find a chief of staff who's willing to book calendar invites for you. Sure, it's doable. I'd assume most people with a highly strategic, high leverage background don't want to do that, and so they won't sign up for the role. But let's say they do, right? You want your chief of staff spending all their time, 90+% of their time, deciding the future of the business, right? Not booking calendar invites. You can do that for a much cheaper cost. And so you're really shooting yourself in the foot with having much less leverage with the chief of staff doing VA roles. So in this case, I laughed and was like, hey, your chief of staff needs a VA. Different roles. Cool. So how do we do that? How do we find the right title? In this case, you figure out, I've said this 7 times, I'll say it in the 8th. Figure out the tasks you need done first, right? Once you've got that list, you look at those tasks and we say, okay, what titles do we have? What titles apply that would hook the type of person that I need for those tasks, right? Not what conventional title applies to those tasks. It's all a title is it brings in a type of person, right? It's a hook. If you think of it as an ad, it's your hook copy on an ad. So what title can I use to hook in the person that I would need as a skill set I want to do those tasks, right? That's one. And then 2 is look at the size of the market for that title. Why do I say that? Conventionally, it's not a big deal. But recently I've been getting a lot of requests for roles that just are so new that they kind of don't exist. And let me give you an example. Well, let me come back to the example before. I had this $3 million paid media agency who was like, hey, I need to build AI agents. I said, great. But that's cool. But like, I can't go out to the market and run ads for an AI agent builder. I could, but the total market size is pretty low for people because it's such a new thing. And so what I suggested instead was like, hey, there's certain roles where you need someone pre-programmed with a bunch of skills. Cool. There's certain roles that you need a certain values, traits, characteristics, and they can learn these skills. That's the latter for this one. And so what we did is we said, hey, especially for, side tangent, especially for more junior tasks, for more junior staff, you want will over skill, right? Willpower over skill in most cases. I found that all experience is a side tangent, but helpful. All experience is not good experience, right? So you've got, say, a BDR doing outreach, and that BDR has 5 years experience. That doesn't mean that the last person they had taught them well, right? There's a lot of bad teachers out there. There's a lot of bad best practices out there, right? And so I prefer, especially with less senior folk, that they're just hungry people, and we teach them, right? Because not all experience is good experience, right? Anyway, in this case, what we said is, hey, who's the best fit for this role? And in this case, it was for a role that doesn't exist yet, right? Which is an AI agent builder. We want to build a team of them. And so we said, hey, best fits in this case is an automation engineer who had Make, N8N, Zapier experience. We found that after testing a bunch of different titles, and we've since placed 7 engineers into the business, right? Other example I kept alluding to was like, hey, what happens when you mess up the titles, right? And so in this case, we had an agency who helps YouTubers build communities, right? He wanted an ops manager, project manager, EA, right? Well, those are like, they're kind of directionally correlated, right? They're connected. And so it's enough that that's not a bad thing to come ask for. It actually makes sense. But the question is, if you imagine in your head a project manager, imagine in your head an EA, imagine in your head an ops manager. They're just such different people, right? And so who do you want? It's going to be roughly the same tasks. I mean, like EA's got different tasks, right? Ops and project managers got different tasks. But like directionally, let's take a look at the list of tasks and say, okay, who's the right person to fit that, right? And so we ran a bunch of tests and ended up deciding that the project manager brought in the best quality for us that we were looking for. And so we've now placed 11 people for him, right? Super excited. Cool. Okay, right compensation, right? Look, in this case, if you compensate too high, you overpay, and you can't grow as fast. You can't have like, I don't know, 3 hires at the price of 1, right? And go too low, you don't get the talent you want, right? And so you get 2 options. One is you can look at benchmark studies, right? We've done a bunch. We've had 27,000 applicants. And so if you got questions on that, happy to, you're like, hey, for this role, like, what should that look like? Like, we got you. And I've got plenty of resources at the end for that. But if you need talent faster, use benchmark studies. If you're willing to take time, you can test on your own, right? So what you do is, say you post on a bunch of job boards, start on the lower end, right? Take your range that you think is right, start on the lower end, and look at the quality that comes in. If you're looking at the quality, you're like, hey, this isn't the quality I expected, bump it up. You are able to keep in mind, you are able to get amazing quality at lower rates. It's just going to take longer, right? All compensation does is just speed up people that apply. And so keep bumping it up until you get the quality that you're happy with. But rough rule of thumb, in Latin America, for most non-technical junior roles, by technical I mean specialized, $1,300 to $1,700 a month is going to be a fair range. It depends on your experience. There's a lot of levers to pull, but if you want to like start with that rough range in mind, you won't be too far off. You'll have to adjust a little bit depending on the role. Cool. Okay, so back to role design. We had a question at the beginning, if you recall, where we said, hey, okay, we know our tasks. Do we do the thing when people are tech, right? I have to address this a little more. Spend a little time on this because with the push of AI, right? There's a big question with every task is should I have a person do it or AI do it, right? Previously it was a lot easier. You say people. Now you say, hey, AI can do a lot, right? should it be done with people or tech? So your goal is to move to a world where you can deliver as many clients as humanly possible at crazy quality and insane margins, right? And so to get there, like, that means more automation, more AI. But like, what point does it make sense? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I don't think the point is when the tech is the best. That is true. But the other point is when your processes that make the best sense for you are in a good spot, right? Because if you look at like Elon's framework, I have it in the appendix if it's helpful. But he's got a 5-step process to get to automation. Automation is step 5, not step 1. Because to quote Elon, the stupidest thing you can do is automate a process that shouldn't exist, right? Optimize a process that shouldn't exist. And so what I think you should do is tinker with the steps, right? Nail the steps, cut out extra steps, optimize them, speed up the process using people because it's just so agile, right? And you get really fast responses, all that kind of stuff. Then once you're getting closer and closer to be confident with the steps, start tinkering with the tech, right? Figure out which tech works best for your use case. And then step 3 is once you're like, okay, I've got the steps down. I know the best practices. I got the tech down. I know what tech we're going to use, right? That's where you build what I call cyborgs, right? Which is people with high leverage from tech, right? Where you empower each hire with automation and AI to deliver far more than they could otherwise, right? And so I recommend, again, biased, I run a talent agency, but we use a lot of AI agents in our own business. Right? That's part of the reason we're able to filter through and get so many candidates is the amount of AI agents we use internally, right? But we had to do a manual process first before we could do that. But when in doubt, start with people and processes, optimize the heck out of those processes, then bring in tech to make to 10x, 100x, 1000x those processes, right? Cool. All right. Let's find your top performer. Now, this is the section. I'm going to go through a little faster than the other ones because the sections 1 and 3 are going to be most unique to what we have here. But you need to know how to find these high performers before you can make sure that you onboard them correctly, right? Cool. So the questions around hiring are going to be, hey, are you finding enough people? Are they the right people? And then once you've got the list of 3 to 5 people, like, you got to make the tough decision. Who's the best for you? Cool. So when I keep throwing this number that we have 2,000 applicants, but who cares about the number of applicants? What we care about is the quality. And so what levers can you pull to adjust quality? Let's say I'm assuming a bunch of you post on job boards, run ads, etc., to find people, word of mouth, etc. What we do is we do a bunch of those channels, but let's just talk about job boards because it's something you can do. Job boards are just ads. It's just ads. Right? And so what levers can you pull to adjust quality as people come in from your advertisements? You can target different people, target different locations, change the compensation range, change the title. Title hooks in different people. Change the ad copy. That's a big one. That's actually, all of these have obviously a big hit. For us, we hire expert copywriters, and we found a huge spike when we just tinker with the ad copy a bit more. Cool. And so we make sure people are amazing by matching resumes, interviewing, and we run tests. Right? The testing is probably more unique to what we do on that front. Cool. For resume matching, you want to aim for 20% resume match. If you look at all your resumes and you're like, 100% of these match, then like your role design was probably pretty general and not specific enough to your business, and so it's probably going to be a fail, right? If it's like, hey, only 5% of these resumes are a good match for us, that's also a flag because it means that the job ad isn't descriptive enough, like you're not hooking in the right person, right? And so either you're way too general with what you need and you haven't put much thought into it, if it's way over 20%, if it's way under 20%, your job advertisement, the copy on that thing might not be too accurate. Cool. How do we interview? So what we do is, first off, if you're hiring through a job ad overseas, you should request videos first, right? Why? Because it's going to cut out a lot. You don't want to hop on the phone with people you don't want to hop on the phone with, or with people it's a waste of your time. And so cut out people with bad English, right? Every single person we talk to should have amazing English. Two is a lot of people out there who are unprofessional. They're low energy. You just don't want to waste your time talking to them, right? So Loom videos, this is a tele, doesn't matter. I actually get a lot of like just videos on their phone, posted to a Google Drive, whatever gets the video into your inbox. Ask for video first. After you've gotten that video, then do interviews, right? The interviews it's just a live one-on-one kind of test to make sure that they didn't lie in your resume, they didn't lie in the interview intro video, and to make sure it's a cultural match for you guys. Like their energy is the same as you, like you're vibing, all that kind of stuff. Skills we do more in tests. I just like interviews. We do a few rounds of interviews, and I like to look for more soft skills during the interviews. And yeah, the cultural match is probably a bigger deal than most people think. Because if you get someone who's low energy, like they're always gonna be low energy, and if you're a high energy person, it's not gonna match well. Cool. Yeah, and then last tip on the interview, if you're down to the top 3 to 5, talk to them again, and actively dissuade them from joining. Right? Like do not. The biggest mistake people make in interviews is they'll like sell the job so much that anyone wants to take it. You're still interviewing, and so you want to actively dissuade people by saying how hard it'll be, right? If my heads up, there's going to be a challenge, right? You want people who love the challenge, not people who are drained by the idea of a challenge, right? And so if you can, before you give an offer, just talk about how like the hard parts about working, the realities of it, but make it a little harder than reality, right? The people who stay after that are going to be the people who are going to be an awesome fit for you and your business. Cool. Examples of tests, right? After the interview, we do tests. And so things like personality tests, detail tests is a big one, especially for very detailed roles. It's hard to like, you're not going to talk your way into convincing me you're a detailed person, right? Like I got to see it. And so what we do here is we have like I made a fake database, right? A lot of mistakes hidden in it. Wink, wink, mistakes. And so if they're detail oriented, they'll catch the mistakes as you're filling out the database. And so I can look and see how they're I also put are they critical thinkers? I put critical thinking issues into that. And so I can see, are they paying attention to details? Do they care? Are they thoughtful? And it really weeds out a lot of people to actually make sure that the quality is great. But then there's things like creative portfolios, trial projects. So for example, my writer is in Brazil, and the way I chose her, I had 1,700 applicants for that one. And she sent me a LinkedIn post, a YouTube script that looked she did her homework. It looked exactly like me and sounded like me. And I was like, all right, great, hired. So if you can ask them to do a test, personality test, trial projects, etc., to really back up what they're saying. If it's longer than, say, 30 minutes, I would pay for it. It'll motivate them to do it. If it's less than 30 minutes, it can be free. Cool. Tips for the final hire. Okay, so this is the hard part. You had 2,000 applicants. You brought it down to even a couple hundred. Imagine it's a couple hundred, right? You have it down to a list of 3 to 5. And you love 3 of them. This always happens. There's a few where you're like, oh, I can see all of them working. Shoot, this is a hard one, right? This is where you have to go back to the role design you had at the beginning. If you find yourself struggling to choose who you should pick, then you need to go back and have more clarity on who you actually need in the role. Go back and figure out, what do I need in the role? Compare that to the person who's the best fit for that. Do that. You're going to be biased by the person you like, not the person you need. Cool. Last section, onboarding, right? How do I create, I'll say this 100 times. I can find you the best talent in the world, but if they don't have an environment where they're going to succeed, they'll fail. And so we need to make sure we create that environment for them so that you when you hire good talent, they actually succeed for you. Cool. So what happens when you rush onboarding, which is so common? A lot of people rush onboarding. Most people rush onboarding. What happens? All onboarding is it's taking success, the expectations of success from your head and putting in the talent's head, right? So what does that mean when you don't do that correctly, right? You have bad communication, you have bad execution, values just aren't correct. Like it's just a hodgepodge of things that just don't fit you and your business what you wanted, right? That vision you had at the beginning when you hire someone is just not working out because you didn't spend the time to tell them what would happen. And so I got this principle. Look, If the talent doesn't do something they want, that you want them to do, they either, one, didn't know they had to, or two, they didn't know how to, right? Both of those things are handled at onboarding. So let's get that right. Cool. Onboarding gone wrong. Here's an example. So usually onboarding problems are bad performance, right? You look and you're like, hey, like you're not communicating well, you're not doing these deliverables in this way, etc. Here's an example of just an instant quit. It was 24 hours, right? The best candidates don't just want money, they want to grow and thrive and really have an impact, right? In this case, this guy signed on and saw that there was no processes, no structure, no organization, and he quit. I don't even think it was 24 hours, right? And so when you don't do it right, good talent gets frustrated. Cool. So how do you onboard, right? 4 different ways, 4 different sections, let's call it. One is we got to make sure that new hires know how to succeed in your business specifically. 2 is we need to make sure the new hires know how to succeed in their role. 3 is give them tools to go to for questions, because you don't want them going to you for questions, because then you lose the leverage that you were trying to, like, you hire them to do a task for you, so you don't have to be in the weeds. If they go to questions all the time, then you're back in the weeds again, right? Lastly is performance, right? What does good look like? And then if they don't do good, like, what's the exit path look like? That's super important to have clear for everyone to manage morale, and I'll explain that in a sec too. Okay, cool. So how do new hires succeed in your business, right? So these are screenshots from Talent HQ, from our business, and steal them. Steal what works if you don't have them, right? So one is values, right? I have 5 values that are mission critical for the business, right? So speed, learn fast, communicate well, problem solve / critical thinking, and attention to detail, right? And so if you see on the left here, it's intentionally small because it's an icon when you pay attention to the words, but the idea is that this is actually a performance tracker. And so we have the values down the side, the definition clearly explaining what the value is, because values tend to be these fluffy words. It could mean anything. And then examples of low performance, and this is cut off, but it's examples of low performance, so it's clear what bad looks like. The next column, examples of good performance, is clear what good looks like, and then this template is copy pasted for every person, so that we on a monthly basis talk how are they doing compared to Talent HQ's values on a monthly basis. Are they improving? Are they not? If they're not improving, spoiler alert, not improving for too many sessions in a row, we start to put them on a performance improvement plan, which means that ultimately if they don't continue to improve, they get let go, right? Super important to have that clear process. We'll talk about it in a sec. The other one is how to use tools, your business's tools. Let's use Asana as an example. To be super clear, none of this is things that can be Googled, right? If you can Google it, if you can go to Perplexity and type in how to use this Asana thing, it should not be in your internal processes, because like that's how everyone can use it. What's most important is how do you use it specifically. So as an example, like when do you flag leadership on something, right? If you have something you have to say, do you say it in a Slack or Asana, right? We have like guidelines on how to do that. Cool. Other things in terms of how to succeed, right? We build 30, 60, 90-day plans. And so that means like what skills and abilities you need in your first 30 days, then 60, then 90, mess that up and we're off track, nail that and we're good, right? What are expectations? What does good look like in the deliverables that you own, right? And then 3 here is what does good look like in the processes that you have, right? That you have to do. And so in this case, like for our account managers, you're looking at screenshot account managers here. We have 7 steps that they do every time we onboard a new client, right? And so we explain what do we expect out of each of the 7 steps, right? Cool. As you're listening to this, you're like, Brian, this is a lot. And I'm like, yes, because onboarding, taking expectations of success from your head and putting in the talent's head is hard, right? And we have resources to copy paste in the business to make it easy for you. But a lot of people rush and they skip all of this and then get surprised that the talent has no idea how to execute what they need to get done, right? Okay, where do they go for questions? Because we don't want you to be the bottleneck for all questions. And so I have a wiki, right, for all company-wide trainings. And then I have role-specific SOPs for each role, right? So account manager, we have BDRs, project managers, executive assistant, content writers. Each one has their own guidebook on tools, resources, success, that kind of stuff. To clarify, nobody reads 1,000 SOPs, right? If you make a ton of SOPs, nobody's gonna read them. And so all you have to do is find the highest value points in your process in the business. In other words, the points that you just really can't afford to mess up, and make SOPs for that, right? The rest of it should be covered by values, not SOPs. Cool? Okay, performance improvement, right? So there's a hot take on the internet where people say, hey, formal performance is stupid, on the spot is where it's at, right? I say both. Each one has its own case, right? So as an example, you know how nobody reads 1,000 SOPs? Nobody remembers 1,000 tips, performance tips, right? And so, or 1,000 pieces of feedback, said a different way. And so what I like to do is in formal performance, I actively think about what are the 3 things that I want the person to focus on, and we're going to track consistently, give them resources and tools to improve, right? That way they only have a few things in their head that they need to focus on improving, and great. On the spot performance is more for reminders of those things, but then every random like little adjustments. And the way I see it is if I do on the spot feedback and I have too many of those, I don't expect my talent to remember all of them. I do expect my talent to remember the formal performance, right? That's the difference. And if that on the spot happens a lot, right? 2, 3 times, it then becomes put into the formal performance so we can talk about it. Right? Cool. And the reason on the spot performance is helpful is because, think Pavlov's dogs, where like the closer your feedback mechanism is to the moment that the person did the thing, the more likely you are to adjust and learn, right? Cool. So last thing, right? Exit plan. This has to be clearly documented and explained to everyone. If they don't improve the over feedback, then we need to have a conversation, right? I call that a performance improvement plan. If they're on PIP, right, performance improvement plan, for too long, a month at this point, because they've already had a few warnings, then it's not a good fit when we talk about exit, right? Why is that important? It's important for morale of the rest of your team, because if the rest of your team is like, hey, this person got fired randomly, then that's just going to scare them, right? But if they're like, oh, this person was warned on a performance improvement plan. They got put on a performance improvement plan because they were warned 2 times in a session, and they didn't improve. Makes sense. It's not going to happen to me, and so they're not demotivated, and boom, they can keep going. So that's helpful. I think the trade-off to that is it's a slower exit process, right? You ever hear the phrase like hire slow, fire fast? There's situations where you do have to fire fast, right? And in that case, it's a risk to demotivate, and you have to think about how you're going to PR challenge, like how you're going to talk about it internally to your folks. But in the case where that's not the case, and you can kind of do it on track, it's going to be a little more motivating to the team. Cool. So those are the 3 buckets, right? Design the role, hire the right person, make sure that you onboard correctly. If you do those things, then you're far more likely to get the hire that you need and make sure they're successful, right? And so I've alluded to a ton of resources in this conversation. I want to give them to you because I want you to succeed, right? And so 27,000 people have applied to our roles. We use these tools to find them, hire, onboard, etc. I want to give them to you, right? And so I'll show you what I'm going to give you. There's a lot of resources. I'll leave a link for you to chat with me directly so I can walk you through these resources as you have questions, because I'm sure you will have questions, especially the role design part, right? The role design part is a little extra custom, and so I definitely recommend, if you're looking at that, to have a conversation, but the rest of it should be pretty straightforward. All right. So what do we have Talent HQ for you? Role, hiring, onboarding, talked about that. Okay, so for hiring, I got a package. Steal our interview scripts. Don't make them up. We have interview scripts. Steal those. Job description template. Remember I told you the copywriting is the most important part, right? It's one of the biggest leverage that we can have. Job description, right? Steal our templates. Onboarding. I have a full onboarding guide where we talk about creating values, your mission. It's all in there. I haven't covered that in detail in this conversation. I can do a separate video on that, but it'll be covered in the onboarding guide, right? So you'll get the onboarding guide. You'll get the 30, 60, 90-day plan template, right? Where you can see how do we actually do this so that folks, new hires know what success looks like in that time frame, right? And then our performance. Remember I referred to that performance tracker? You'll get the performance tracker too, right? So you can put in your own values, your own skills, make a template for each one of your hires, and then track it on a monthly basis to make sure that they're improving over time or get put on the performance improvement plan. Cool. Role design. It's a bit more custom, right? There's a systems review. That's the workflow. I've got a link. I'll include it where I'm happy to chat you through it. But let's take a look at what are the tasks you need. Systems reviews. What are the tasks you need done? Who are you going to do them for? To make sure that you aren't working in the business, you can work on the business, right? Role design. Let's take a look at if you've got a bunch of tasks for a role you're hiring for. Let's audit those roles and make sure that like you've actually got the right ones and you're not hiring a unicorn. And the last one's hiring planning, right? If you're growing fast, you need to project out when you're going to need which roles. If you don't project out, you're going to be hiring retroactively, which means you're always going to be putting out fires, which means that you're going to be working in the business, never on the business. It's really hard to grow, right? And so building a planning out projections based on on your revenue projections is going to be critical to help you scale, right? Cool. So we've got role design, we've got hiring, we've got onboarding, right? So I've included this all free, link in the description, and hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, here's my email. Feel free to email me. And if you click the link in the description, you can just put your name and email. I'll shoot over this package for you and answer any questions you got. Hope that was helpful. We'll chat soon.